Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. The search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, is intensifying. The FBI now offering a $50,000 reward.
Major shakeup in prescription drug costs. President Trump unveils TrumpRx.gov, promising steep discounts on popular medications.
Could another partial government shutdown be on the horizon? Debate around immigration enforcement is heating up as Republicans say Democrats' demands are unrealistic.
Forget the charts and the graphs. What does it feel like when grocery bills spike or rent jumps by $400 overnight? Up ahead, we'll take a look at the personal toll of inflation in everyday life and what you can do about it.
And in the NFL, the big game is just 2 days away. NTD's Dave Martin joins us with a preview of the matchup.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Today's Friday, February 6th. You're watching NTD Good Morning. In today's top news, the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, is intensifying. There's been no sign that any captors have tried to contact the family, and authorities are stepping up the investigation. Here's the latest.
And we're going to start today by announcing...
The FBI has announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie, or the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance. Investigators say they believe 84-year-old Guthrie is alive, even though there has been no public response from possible captors, and no suspect has been identified. In a video posted on social media, her son Cameron pleaded for someone to reach out directly to the family.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward.
Days after Nancy Guthrie's disappearance on January 31st, several media outlets said they received letters demanding ransom. An FBI agent said the first deadline passed at 5 p.m. Thursday. He said the letters contained a second deadline for Monday. However, he said no one has made any attempt to contact the family directly, even after they put out a plea on social media.
I think it's pretty clear the family wants to be contacted. They know time is of the essence, and if those that may have Nancy are watching this, the family is ready to talk, get proof of life. In a normal kidnapping case, there would be contact by now trying to discuss that.
Authorities arrested a California man yesterday who allegedly sent texts to the family with false ransom demands. The FBI is not linking these texts to the ransom letters. The local sheriff confirmed blood found near the entrance of the Arizona home did come from Guthrie, but he said authorities are continuing to assume she is still alive.
We operate from a position that until we know she's out there, she's alive, and we're going to continue thinking that way until we find her.
The sheriff said the night Guthrie went missing, her doorbell camera disconnected. He said the software detected a person, but no video is available. He also said Guthrie's pacemaker app shows it was disconnected from her phone. The sheriff said Guthrie was dependent on daily medication. Authorities are concerned that going this long without medication could prove fatal. President Trump says he has spoken to Savannah Guthrie and directed all federal law enforcement to assist in the investigation. The FBI says Director Kash Patel is being briefed about the situation several times a day.
And a major development on prescription drug costs. President Trump announcing the launch of TrumpRx.gov, a new website offering steep discounts on commonly used medications.
That's right. Very interesting. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that, plus other drug news from the FDA.
Donald J. Trump.
President Trump says TrumpRx.gov is a game changer.
This is a very big deal. People are going to save a lot of money and be healthy.
The president says the program delivers historic savings.
This launch represents the largest reduction in prescription drug prices in history by many, many times, and it's not even close. You're going to see numbers that you're not going to believe.
Trump says Americans being treated fairly is long overdue.
Americans have long been paying the highest drug prices anywhere in the world, while other countries often paid pennies on the dollar for the exact same drugs. We were essentially subsidizing the entire world and subsidizing by hundreds of billions of dollars every year.
The drug website's chief design officer explains how to use it.
This is TrumpRx.gov, and I'm going to start at the search bar where I can search by the drug name. So I type in Gonal-F, and I see it auto-completes. When I click on this, I have a beautiful page that shows the drug product. And right at the top, I see this is 83% off the original price. Now, how do I get this discount? I take this coupon and I bring it to the pharmacy. I can print it out. I can add it to my wallet on my phone, whether it's an Apple or an Android. I show it to the pharmacist and I get the coupon credit right at the register.
Mr. President, 1 in 3 families is having trouble having a baby. We're going to have a lot of Trump babies with these costs. Folks cannot afford these medications. It's going to change their lives.
Americans will see steep price cuts on several high-cost medications. Monthly costs for the weight loss drug Ozempic drop from about $1,028 to around $350, while Wegovy injections fall as low as $199. Zepbound declines from nearly $1,100 to roughly $346 on average. Fertility patients may save more than $2,000 per cycle, with major reductions on Gonal-F, Cetrotide, and Ovidrel.
The president's leadership on price transparency and on reducing the cost of medications, some of which are essential in my fertility treatments, has a real and immediate impact.
Discounts also target inhalers, insulin, and treatments for asthma, COPD, and osteoporosis. Trump says the top pharmaceutical companies will also be investing hundreds of billions of dollars to bring drug manufacturing back to America.
It's already happening. They're building plants all over the country. Eli Lilly is building 6 plants with billions and billions of dollars each, which means jobs, economic growth, factory openings, and far greater national security. And it's really a big factor was the tariffs.
The FDA is launching a new pilot program aimed at bringing drug manufacturing back to the U.S. The initiative cuts regulatory barriers and helps companies build facilities faster. And in more drug news, the FDA says it will take action against companies that mass market illegal copycat versions of FDA-approved drugs. This came as Novo Nordisk announced yesterday that it would take legal action against Him and Hers Health, which recently offered a $49 compounded version of its Wegovy weight loss pill. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And important developments coming out of Iran.
The U.S. virtual embassy in Iran is urging all American citizens to leave the country immediately.
The virtual embassy issued an alert saying U.S. citizens should make plans for departing Iran that do not rely on U.S. government help. It says travelers can expect flight cancellations or disruptions with little warning, and anyone who cannot leave, they should find a secure location and hunker down with food, water, medications, and other essential items. The embassy also provided a list of land border crossings that are currently open and safe for Americans, including Armenia and Turkey.
The warning comes as U.S. and Iran begin talks in Muscat, Oman. Iranian media outlets say the negotiations have started. The talks come after a chaotic week that saw the meeting postponed and relocated from Turkey.
Now, these are the first official talks between the two sides since the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear sites last year in Midnight Hammer. They came amid heightened tensions and mass protests against the Iranian regime. Ahead of this meeting, Iran's foreign minister said his country enters diplomacy, in his words, with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year.
Leading the U.S. delegation is Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. The Iranian side is being led by its regime's foreign leader. It remains unclear just what terms Iran will be willing to negotiate. Tehran has maintained that these talks will only be on its nuclear program. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio said earlier the negotiations must include Iran's ballistic missiles and its funding of terrorist groups across the region.
And the U.S. military says it carried out another lethal strike on an alleged drug trafficking vessel in the Eastern Pacific. Southern Command released this video showing the boat moving before being struck by what it described as a lethal kinetic strike. Now, Southcom says intelligence confirmed the vessel was transiting along known narco-trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific and was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. The military says 2 people were killed in the strike and no U.S. forces were injured. This is the second such strike in the Eastern Pacific this year.
Meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia have exchanged 314 prisoners of war amid trilateral negotiations. And also, the nuclear arms treaty between the U.S. and Russia expired yesterday, ending limits on the 2 superpowers' nuclear arsenals in decades.
Now, President Trump is already proposing a solution to that. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more on that.
The president wants to have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future.
The so-called New START Treaty went into effect in 2011 under President Obama and was extended for 5 years in 2021. Its expiration ends limits on the two largest nuclear arsenals for the first time in decades. President Trump commented on the treaty, calling it a badly negotiated deal by the United States that, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. Instead of extending it, Trump now wants nuclear experts to work on a new, improved treaty that can last long into the future. And in other Russia-related news, the US brokered a POW exchange between Russia and Ukraine on Thursday.
Son, we're waiting, because I'm going crazy. Come on, hurry up and come here.
The exchange was announced after a two-day meeting between officials from the US, Ukraine and Russia. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says Russia and Ukraine agreed to exchange over 300 prisoners, the first such exchange in 5 months.
I congratulate all the families who are welcome their loved ones back home. This is very important.
Witkoff announcing Washington also made progress in its relations with Moscow, saying the United States and Russia also agreed to establish a military-to-military dialogue. This channel of communication was suspended prior to the onset of this conflict and is crucial to achieving and maintaining peace. He added that talks will continue, with additional progress anticipated in the coming weeks. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says specific details of the trilateral talks can't be made public yet.
Regarding the nature of the conversation and what was discussed, they talked about everything. The negotiators consider the information very sensitive and want to come and brief me in detail.
The Russian side says the three parties did make some progress toward a peace treaty to end the war. According to Zelensky, the next summit could take place in the US. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And joining us now to discuss the latest in trilateral peace talks between Russia and Ukraine is national security analyst Rebecca Grant, who's also vice president of the Lexington Institute. Good to have you with us this morning. Rebecca, Russia and Ukraine, as we just heard, had each agreed to exchange 157 prisoners just yesterday. How much does this go towards peace efforts more broadly?
Well, I'm certainly glad to see the Ukrainian prisoners coming home, but we can't read too much into this. It's a little bit of a sign of goodwill from Putin to President Trump and to our other emissaries there. But we are also hearing a lot coming out of Abu Dhabi from the Russians of complaints about security guarantees for Ukraine, complaints about EU access, a lot of detailed nitpicking that tells me that Russia still is really digging in their heels and not willing to concede on some major issues. So I'm afraid that team is making progress, but they have a lot of work to do even to get to a ceasefire.
And just as of yesterday, we also just heard Russia and the U.S. no longer have a legally binding nuclear arms control treaty. How does that play into the talks and the peace efforts right now?
Right, and we saw that one coming. Again, we've got our NATO commander there, a U.S. Air Force General Alex Grinkovich, also known as Grinch from his days as an F-22 pilot. It looks to me like he's been instrumental in getting the military to military communications restored between the U.S. and Russia. There was a pretty long, extensive history of them exchanging some communications over hotspots in the world. But as for this treaty, apparently they are discussing it on the sidelines in Abu Dhabi. But the big problem with this treaty, in a way, is not really Russia, although they've been violating the treaty for quite some time. It's actually China, because China is the one increasing its nuclear arsenal from about 300 warheads up to 600 now, on track to go to 1,000 and then up to 1,500, which is where that old New START treaty limit put the U.S. and Russia. I think President Trump wants to get back into arms control, but he wants China to be a part of the picture as well.
And what will that take?
Almost impossible to say, because China has just flat out refused to participate in arms control at all. So there they are, opening up plutonium reprocessing, building warheads faster than anybody else on the planet, and they don't even want to talk about arms control. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing the US and Russia work on an outline that would extend New START, but it's got to be in ways that are okay for the US arsenal as well, because, now, unlike in the Obama years, we are facing really two large nuclear armed powers, not just Russia, but now an ascendant China as well. And that really complicates the US-Russia piece of the negotiation too.
And how much do you see China playing into Russia's ongoing assaults here? They've kept up their assaults despite peace efforts, which makes them look pretty insincere in those efforts. At the same time, China has its own plans and kind of wants to destabilize the U.S. And drain it of resources. So do you see this kind of just going on, driven by China's efforts there on the nuclear front?
Oh, 100%. And sad to say, but the longer the Ukraine war goes on, the better that suits China. They're happy to see Russia using its military strength, taking all those casualties, and then the destabilization for the U.S. as well, and for the whole world. If China, of course, is the whole reason that Putin was able to go on Ukraine in the first place. China keeps them in business with the energy purchases, buying almost half of Russia's oil, and even supplying defense electronics that are used to make the drones. A lot of those are Iranian-designed drones now manufactured in Russia. So, Xi Jinping could call the end of the Ukraine war tomorrow if he put the pressure on Russia, but we know he won't do that. And so sadly, that's been a huge, huge piece of making this just that much harder. With his backing, Putin, who likes the war and still wants Ukraine, though he's never going to get it, but he feels he's able to continue this horrible fight.
And yet, President Trump has used a variety of unconventional means to rein in powers that are going wayward and causing chaos across the world. What other tactics potentially could the president use in this instance?
Well, he's on a long-term play with India with the new trade deal, hoping to, in his word, pivot India's oil purchases away from Russia. They still buy about 30% of Russia's oil and try to supply them more Venezuelan oil. Now, this may work out, but it's going to take time. So Trump will have to continue that economic pressure. There needs to be military pressure in the form of Ukrainian strikes on more legitimate Russian targets in Crimea and other locations. Of course, Ukraine has done strikes against Russian air bases, Russian energy infrastructure, and against bases that are used by the Russians to launch those horrible drone and missile attacks against Ukraine. We may need to see more of that in order to make Putin serious about a ceasefire.
And back on these peace talks, do you think China should be participating?
Well, if only they would help. But I think the key for the peace talks right now is to lock down U.S. security guarantees. And that means not only the economic prospects for Ukraine going forward, but the serious defense of Europe with Abrams tanks, with Patriot missiles, with U.S. command and control through NATO, because they could stop the guns in Ukraine tomorrow and Russia would still be a major threat. And if we see any advance in the Russian position, every advance by Russia in Ukraine is a danger to Europe. We're going to have to contain Russia for a long time. It's going to take a lot of American power with NATO to do that.
Watching it closely. Thank you so much, Rebecca Grant. Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
And up ahead, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the economy is showing signs of easing pressure, citing low inflation and declining building costs.
And we're now moving to the weather. The Northeast and Mid-Atlantic are looking at another weekend of extreme cold. It has been very cold.
Here we go again, right? Yeah, the forecasters, they're warning of potentially damaging winds, and that's going to be coupled with frigid temperatures.
The National Weather Service is predicting wind chills as low as minus 30 degrees in the interior Northeast and New England.
Yikes, yeah. The frigid temperatures are going to be accompanied by winds gusting more than 50 miles per hour with brief periods of intense snowfall.
Snow showers could start as soon as tonight in the tri-state area.
Forecasters warn Sunday morning could be the coldest of the season, for at least here in New York City. Temperatures nearing 6 degrees.
So stay warm. ICE is demanding that California, that is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is demanding that California turn over 33,000 illegal immigrants from their jails for deportation. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
ICE Director Todd Lyons says California has 33,179 criminal illegal immigrants in custody that ICE could pick up for deportation. However, he says California isn't cooperating and these immigrants will likely be released back on the streets. Lyons says Governor Newsom and his fellow California sanctuary politicians are releasing murderers, pedophiles, and drug traffickers from their jails back into our neighborhoods and putting American lives at risk. White House Border Czar Tom Homan has said picking up illegal immigrants directly from jails is common sense.
It's safer for the community, safer for the officers, and safer for the alien.
Homeland Security says that California has released 4,500 criminal illegal immigrants since January 20th that could have been picked up by ICE. Some of these were arrested by ICE by sending out teams into the communities, such as Carmelo Hurtado, who was convicted of first-degree murder, who was arrested and deported by ICE after being released from a California jail. Homan said that it takes 1 or 2 agents to make an arrest at a jail, but it's a different story when they have to arrest someone in the community.
And what happens is now we got to arrest somebody on his turf who has access to who knows what weapons. Now we got to send the whole team. Then because of the hateful rhetoric and the attacks on ICE officers, now we got to send a security team behind the arrest team. So what could have been done with one person in a safety and security jail, now we got 15, 16 people out there doing it.
And the DHS announces the arrest of an illegal immigrant who the department says is responsible for killing 4 people in a crash while driving a semi-truck in Indiana. The man had a commercial truck driver's license issued in Pennsylvania. The DHS says that because the state of Indiana cooperates with ICE, agents were able to take him into custody Thursday morning.
An individual who was paroled into the country by the Biden administration using the CBP-1 app.
The Department of Justice announces the arrest of a self-identified Antifa member for allegedly making murder and assault threats against ICE. Attorney General Pam Bondi says this man allegedly doxed and called for the murder of law enforcement officers, encouraged bloodshed in the streets, and proudly claimed affiliation with the terrorist organization Antifa before going on the run. The DOJ says Kyle Wagner was arrested in Minneapolis and is facing federal threat and cyberstalking charges. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Thank you, Jason, for that report. Law enforcement sources confirmed with multiple media outlets that a Maryland man is being charged with the attempted murder of Russell Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Colin DeMarco was arrested last month after he allegedly showed up at Vought's home. Police say he was arrested after a witness said they saw him on Vought's porch wearing a surgical mask and rubber gloves. The witness said he appeared to be concealing a firearm under his shirt. Deputies with the U.S. Marshals Service say he claimed to be writing a manifesto and had what they're calling a body disposal guide. The complaint against DeMarco says he told agents the 2024 election was the lowest point of his life. An Office of Management and Budget spokesperson told NBC News yesterday the office is grateful for the work of law enforcement in keeping Director Vought and his family safe.
And on Capitol Hill yesterday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testified before the Senate Banking Committee. He reported that pressure on the economy is easing, and then he answered questions on affordability. NTD's Chris Bob brings us more.
The 10-year U.S. Treasury had its best year since 2020. Building costs are now down in the year.
At a hearing of the Senate Banking Committee on Thursday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent opened his testimony pointing to signs of easing pressure in the economy. Democratic lawmakers countered that optimistic assessment with questions on affordability.
Affordability is the top concern for Americans across the country.
Donald Trump has called affordability, I want to get this right, a hoax. He's called it a scam. He's called it a con job. Did grocery prices drop in 2025?
Numerous grocery prices have gone down.
Some of them.
And in fact,
So do
and
you-
in fact
have
we
you
have seen
seen-
inflation at
Please stop.
2.1% for the past 3 months.
Bessent referenced the committee's ranking member, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, in his response, arguing that the roots of today's affordability challenge lie with what he called the Biden-Warren economy.
Senator, it may be a bit nuanced for you, when it was you and President Biden who destroyed the buying power of the American people. So there is an affordability crisis, and you were front and center in it.
Beyond prices, Warren raised concerns about political pressure on the Federal Reserve and whether this could compromise the independence of the central bank.
Can you commit right here and now that Trump's Fed nominee, Kevin Warsh, will not be sued, will not be investigated by the Department of Justice if he doesn't cut interest rates exactly the way that Donald Trump wants?
That is up to the president.
The hearing comes as President Trump has called on Congress to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for 1 year, arguing current rates, often topping 30%, are squeezing families trying to save for homes.
Do you support interest rate caps to improve affordability on credit?
I wholeheartedly support President Trump's policy.
Housing affordability also took center stage as lawmakers debated whether immigration enforcement could ease pressure on rents and home prices.
So clearly, this deportation effort, especially the self-deportations, is going to lead to lower housing prices, and we've already seen it, correct?
We have in rental properties are ranked A through D, and D and C properties, we are seeing a substantial decrease. But what we're also seeing is because of the supply that is coming on, we're seeing a decrease in rents nationwide.
According to the Trump administration, as of February 2nd, new data shows rents posted their 6th straight monthly decline, with the national median rent now at its lowest since 2022. From Washington, D.C., Chris Bobb, NTD News.
Thank you, Chris. And amid a resurgence of faith across America, President Trump is suggesting this spiritual awakening is fueling everything from historic drops in crime to renewed national strength.
Speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington yesterday, the president rededicated America as one nation under God. NTD Washington correspondent Mari Otsu brings us more.
President Trump speaking here in Washington at the National Prayer Breakfast is touting his administration's strides over the past year in bringing faith back to the heart of American life. And he's announcing that the Department of Education is issuing its new guidance on protecting the right to prayer in public schools across the country. He's also saying that on May 17th, he's welcoming Americans across the nation to come to the National Mall here in Washington and to pray together to rededicate America as one nation under God. The president today is also celebrating the one-year anniversary of the creation of the White House Faith Office and Religious Liberty Commission, and he's even suggesting that his administration's successes over the past year are due in part to a return to God. Take a look.
I've always said, you just can't have a great country if you don't have religion.
President Trump has long argued that true national strength starts with faith.
You have to believe in something. You have to believe that what we're doing, there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. We're all working and we're behaving. I mean, I behave because I'm afraid not to, okay? Because I don't want to get in trouble.
That belief appears to be surging. The president says that in 2025, more copies of the Bible were sold in the U.S. than at any time in the last 100 years. And young Americans are returning to church in record numbers. In the last 12 months, their attendance has nearly doubled compared to 4 years ago.
I mean, and maybe that's part of the reason that we're doing so well. There's such great spirit.
President Trump credits this renewed faith for broader successes, including historic drops in crime.
We have the safest country, the best crime numbers since the year 1900.
Yeah. That's
okay?
a stat. Yeah, we know it's true.
Way before my father was born.
Right.
Think of that.
A study from the Council on Criminal Justice shows that the murder rate across America's largest cities plummeted in 2025 to its lowest level since at least 1900. This marks the largest single-year drop in murders in recorded history.
The president also ties faith to strengthen law enforcement at home and security abroad.
But you can only have peace, I find, through strength. If you don't have strength, peace is very hard. And we have strength.
This comes as President Trump is mobilizing every federal resource to help bring NBC host Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy, home safely after her disappearance.
The president and I were watching the press conference about the search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, which is just a heartbreaking situation. The president, as you all know, spoke directly with Savannah yesterday and told her that the federal government is here to help. Any requests that are made by state and local officials in the search of Miss Guthrie will absolutely be accommodated.
Thanks to Mari for that report. And joining us now to discuss Trump's appearance yesterday at the National Prayer Breakfast is Anthony LaBruna. He's the executive director over at the American Principles Project. Anthony, thanks for joining. What were some of yesterday's highlights for you?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing is seeing the president go back out on stage. And he's just such a character, right? Just so warm to the crowd. He starts with jokes. You know, he kind of makes fun of the establishment media and says, you know, a couple of years ago, I came out here and said, you know, I just might not make it to heaven. And, you know, I think he has this touch with the American people where he's genuine and, you know, he's funny. And so coming out there, he cracks a joke. He says, you know, I might not be perfect, but I've given a lot of money to perfect people. And so he's human. And I think that's what that day is all about. It's bringing unity back to the country. And he does such a good job with making it lighthearted and fun. But the big thing for me, the one thing I'm very excited about is his commitment to a national prayer day in a few months and inviting people, Christians and all faiths, walks of life to come out and pray on the National Mall, practice our First Amendment. So we love to see that in our American leader and such a strong president who's made religion and faith a big part of both of his administrations.
Indeed, that was one of his talking points. He made the claim that, you know, no president has done more for promoting the importance of religion in society, linking that to the country's success, both with civility, with crime numbers down, but also with the economic successes that, you know, are potentially starting to churn. I want to get your view on what you expect from this day of prayer. Yesterday was the first time I have heard of it. You know, what do you expect? What do you think will come of that?
Well, I think it's saying something. If you went in 2020, you went to a mass Christian service, you know, a lot of those pews were empty. If you go now, and, you know, I go every Sunday with my wife, it doesn't matter if it's 9 o'clock, the 11 o'clock, the 6:30, 5:30, the pews are packed, you know, and not with just families or older people, it's young people, young men. They're returning to church, which I think says a lot about what our marriage culture is going to look like, right? When you have men going back to church, finding their faith, which President Trump has made a huge issue in both of his elections during his campaigns. And so if these young men have answered the call, they're returning to church, they're looking to get married, they're looking to establish and start families. That's good for the country. That's good for everyday Americans, and it's good for the future. It's for our next generation. I think there's been a lack of making faith popular, especially, you know, for Catholics. They've kind of taken a step back, right? And now you see this major resurgence within the church. You know, APP went and we started this documentary called Fathers Wanted. And Terry spent the last couple of months interviewing people all across the country, all walks of life. And the one thing we found is that when you bring fathers back into the home, it's very important. But what's even more crucial is that a father comes back to the home with some type of faith aspect where he leads from a position of faith as head of the household. And that's so much more crucial than just having a dad back in the home. It's going to be good for the country. It's going to be good for everyday Americans and the next generation looking forward.
Yeah, you bring up some really interesting points. And, you know, Trump said Bible sales broke a record this past year. I don't know where the stat comes from. Any other anecdotes you've observed in this resurgence of you know, Trump actually alluded to, you know, people getting arrested for praying, and that was what he described as like the low point for religion. And in just a few years later, now it's come back in his description, you know, bigger than ever. So what observations, anecdotes are you seeing on the ground?
Well, I think you look at, what this administration's done for people of faith, right? All aspects of faith. Doesn't matter, Jewish, Christian, Muslim. You have the right to practice. You have the right to pray, right? And you see this resurgence of Christianity. And first and foremost, that was led by Charlie Kirk, right? Charlie Kirk, after his passing, you see this resurgence on X and Instagram. You see these young people posting and embracing being a father, being a mother. But part of that aspect is going back to the church, going and being practicing Christians. And so it's funny or not, but, Charlie's a real big reason that's happening. And, you can look at it the way President Trump has led this nation, how he's engaged with faith leaders across all walks of life. It's very important. You look at what he did when they tried to burn St. John's Church across from the White House. He goes out there, carries the Bible. He makes that a part of himself. And I do believe Bible sales are off the charts because you have so many people returning to the church. So I think it's a crucial victory for this administration. And what they've done with the White House by making the White House Faith Office, never done before. That's the first time by President Trump.
Yeah, these are all very interesting developments, and Trump himself crediting the successes of his administration in 1 year really to this resurgence in faith. He's linking it directly, and we'll be very interested to see what comes of this day of prayer in May. Really appreciate your insights today. Anthony LaBruna, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
And free speech under fire in Europe. Experts delivered a warning to the U.S. Congress about the growing threat of European censorship to American free speech.
NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with a Finnish member of parliament. She testified on Capitol Hill about her hate speech charges for tweeting a Bible verse.
The Wednesday hearing was titled Europe's Threat to Speech and Innovation, Part 2, hosted by the House Judiciary Committee. One witness providing testimony was Finnish Member of Parliament Päivi Räsänen, a medical doctor, mother of 5, and a grandmother. The former Minister of the Interior has been a Parliament member since 1995. In 2019, she says she expressed her Christian beliefs about marriage and sexuality in a Twitter post which included some Bible verses. She directed the post to her church in response to their decision to participate in an LGBT parade, which she believes contradicts the Christian faith. She was charged with criminal hate speech under the section of the Criminal Code dealing with war crimes and crimes against humanity. She faces up to 2 years of prison time. Räsänen says the case has never just been about her and a Lutheran bishop charged along with her.
It is about whether peaceful expression of deeply held beliefs can be treated as a criminal act in today's Europe. It is about whether citizens, including clergy and elected representatives, may speak openly on matters of conscience without fear of prosecution. It is about whether it is illegal to say what you believe.
Räsänen says she has been investigated by the police and interrogated for more than 13 hours. Finnish courts unanimously acquitted her, ruling no crime has been committed. Despite the clear rulings, the state prosecution has continued to pursue charges against her, now in the country's Supreme Court.
Our story shows how the process itself becomes the punishment. We have faced years of legal uncertainty. This creates a chilling effect for everyone who holds views outside a narrow state-approved consensus.
Räsänen says democracy becomes fragile when the state controls which ideas and beliefs may be expressed.
Speech that is lawful today can become criminalized tomorrow. This should concern every person that values freedom. I remain hopeful. I trust that freedom of expression can still be upheld. It is too important to lose.
During a break at the National Prayer Breakfast where Räsänen heard President Trump speak on Thursday, the parliament member urged people to use their freedoms of speech and religion.
It is time to speak openly, and it is time to use the freedom of faith, because the more we are silent, the narrower becomes the space to these fundamental rights.
Räsänen knows the decision in her case will set an important precedent, but says she feels calm. A ruling should come by spring, but could come at any time.
I feel that this is in God's hands, and whatever the consequences are, I trust in God.
The parliament member warns the constriction of free speech rights has already happened in Europe. She calls on citizens and lawmakers alike to take heed, saying democracy and freedom are worth fighting for. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And up ahead, 2 Democratic senators are asking the Pentagon to review SpaceX over possible Chinese investment, citing national security concerns.
And rideshare company Uber has been ordered to pay $8.5 million. It comes after accusations of a rape against a company driver. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here's some of today's top headlines. The search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, daughter of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, is intensifying. Authorities announce a $50,000 reward for any information that could lead to her recovery. Investigators say that ransom letters set deadlines, but no one has reached out directly. So authorities also arrested a man who accused of sending a fake ransom message. And President Trump announced the launch of TrumpRx.gov. It's, of course, the new website offering steeply discounted prices on several high-cost medications, and those include drugs for weight loss, diabetes, fertility, and respiratory ailments. The administration says Americans could see major savings, and the FDA pushing a new effort to boost U.S. drug manufacturing locally, and then they're also cracking down on illegal copycat medications. And the State Department urging all Americans to leave Iran immediately. The alert warns of flight disruptions and advises people to shelter in place if they cannot get out of the country. Now, the warning comes as U.S. and Iranian officials begin their talks in Oman. It remains unclear what Iran is willing to negotiate beyond its nuclear program. Those are this morning's top headlines. With that, Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. And 2 Democratic senators are urging the Pentagon to review SpaceX. The move comes amid allegations that Chinese investors may have acquired stakes in the company. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Andy Kim sent a letter to War Secretary Pete Hegseth. They cited media reports and court testimony that suggest Chinese-linked funds were routed through offshore entities to buy SpaceX shares. SpaceX is a major Defense Department contractor. The company launches military and intelligence satellites and operates the Starlink communications network used by the Pentagon. The senators warned that any Chinese ownership could pose national security risks. They've asked the Pentagon to disclose any Chinese investment and outline steps to address potential security concerns. Rideshare company Uber has been ordered to pay about $8.5 million.
The decision yesterday comes after a jury found the company liable for the alleged rape of a woman by an Uber driver in 2023.
Now, this is the first of 6 cases that could help determine the outcome of more than 3,000 sexual misconduct lawsuits against Uber.
The company says nearly 100% of its rides happen without incident and says it's still among the safest ways to get somewhere.
Although the jury ruled in favor of the plaintiff, it did not find that Uber's policies had caused serious risk.
In a statement following the verdict, the company said that it, quote, acted responsibly and invested meaningfully in rider safety. Uber said it plans to appeal the verdict.
Next, efforts are underway in Los Angeles to speed up wildfire recovery.
The Trump administration officials are moving to override the local permitting process for wildfire rebuilding. They're allowing homeowners to bypass the city and county building departments through a new self-certification system. NTD's Christina Corona has more on that.
Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin and Small Business Administration Administrator Kelly Loeffler visited Pacific Palisades to meet with LA Mayor Karen Bass and county officials about speeding up wildfire rebuilding. Zeldin told news outlets concerns include insurance delays and water infrastructure.
In Altadena, it was expressed concerns regarding the impacts of the state insurance regulatory scheme and the impact that that's had in getting payments out to people, as well as the local water systems where they say they have many different water systems and it's not as efficient.
He said permitting isn't the main holdup.
So today we were talking about local permitting, but it wasn't even just about local permitting. It was about the insurance companies, the ones that are still out there screwing these families and not yet paying them everything that they're entitled to.
Supervisor Catherine Barger said 53% of residents still haven't started rebuilding, mainly due to financial strain and delayed insurance payouts. County officials said more than 3,000 permits have already been issued, with reviews typically done in 31 business days. But under a new small business administration rule, borrowers waiting over 60 days can now have builders self-certify compliance and begin rebuilding.
Now, after 13 months of failed state and local leadership to rebuild this community, the SBA was charged with executing under the executive order a rule change that would allow permitting to start happening. We have 12,000 borrowers waiting. There's only been 10 homes rebuilt. It's unacceptable. This president wants this community rebuilt. They don't have schools, they don't have churches, they don't have homes.
Officials discussed the administration's push to allow homeowners to rebuild 10% larger and their opposition to low-income housing zones in Pacific Palisades. Zeldin and Leffler also toured the burn area and met with victims, with Zeldin calling talks with local leaders productive and pledging more federal involvement to help speed recovery. Christina Corona, NTD News.
And welcome back. Yes, inflation is measured in percentages, but it's also felt in so many moments throughout our lives. Maybe standing at the checkout doing mental math, or avoiding medical appointments just for now, or maybe even contending with your rent renewal.
That's right. Joining us now to take a look at how you can carve out some breathing room, both financially as well as emotionally, we welcome financial planner Lawrence Sprung. Lawrence, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Great to have you here. And so let's start with grocery prices. That's always impacted. We've heard a lot over the years about eggs and other things, but what are you seeing in the practical sense, and what also people can do about it?
Yeah, I mean, prices definitely have come down from the heights of 2022, but I still think people have that shock, that sticker shock that they're seeing, and they feel uncomfortable. So I think the best way to approach it is plan, like almost everything. Have a budget that you have in mind for what you're going to spend at the groceries or at the supermarket, and utilize coupons if needed. Utilize a calculator when you go. I remember when I was a kid, my mom used to have the analog calculator to keep track of what she was spending. So you make sure that you're not blowing the budget on things that you don't necessarily need. I think those are the important keys.
Yeah, much more satisfying in the long run.
Yes.
Yeah, credit cards have certainly made that harder to do, right? In the old days, 2 generations ago, people either wrote a check or they paid cash. But your emphasis on find a way to stick to a budget is really important. But another thing that's really affecting a lot of Americans is rent. We just heard Besson say that they're starting to ease now as they're deporting more illegal immigrants, or other people are self-deporting, and more housing is now coming on. But that's really just starting to take effect. Rent has been a struggle for many people over the last couple of years.
Yeah, rent is definitely a problematic, and it's not something you see every day, right? You go to the supermarket a couple times a week, you're seeing that inflationary effect. Rent, you might have a 12-month lease and you may not worry about it for a little while. So I think the lesson here is start that process early. If you're thinking about staying or thinking about moving, take a look and have those conversations and understand what the rent environment looks like. And I think, we're in a power position, meaning if things are softening like we're hearing, we can use that to our advantage. Maybe we don't even get lower rent, but maybe we get 2-3 months free. I was just speaking with a real estate person in Philadelphia because my son's apartment is coming up for renewal in August, and we already started talking to him, and he said, come to me in May. And he goes, there are some locations where your son wants to be come September that right now are softening, and they're offering 3 to 4 months rent free.
Wow.
If you sign a 16-month lease, perhaps, instead of a 12-month lease. So use that to your advantage.
And typically that's the biggest thing on most people's budget, right? Their housing.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds like a lot more flexibility than many people may be aware of. In terms of the emotional cost here, that's a whole other side to it. You must see that in many ways with the people you work with. What's your advice about how to manage that alongside the practical side of things?
Yeah, I think it's tough because people are not, used to these higher prices, and inflation was at bay for so long that we weren't seeing this pricing pressure at all. So it's a new phenomenon that's really kicked in, and I think the important thing is, don't be complicated. Have a budget, have those major line items like food and shelter lined out, and see how you are living up to that, right? And make sure you're not overcomplicating things, automate things, because the worst thing that can happen is, like you said, with the credit cards, is you put it on the credit card, you do it today in the moment, you pay the higher prices, and then you don't make the payment, or you make the minimum, and now you're racking up interest on that. So make sure that you're staying within that budget. You're only putting on the credit card what you could afford to pay at the end of the month, because why pay the bank an extra 20% if you don't have to? And make sure you're making it easy, easing your mind by having a plan going into it and not fretting about it.
It seems like if you're trying to live off a budget, you're either spending a lot of time and you're micromanaging everything, or maybe you're at the other extreme where you're doing what you just described, where you're just like, oh, I don't want to think about this now. Let me just throw it on the credit card. And then there becomes this almost like decision burnout of how to try to cope with those two things. So how do you recommend people just try to simplify and take some of the stress out of their financial decisions?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be that complicated, right? It could be fairly easy, and the banking system now allows us to really track where our expenses are going a little bit easier. But I think, saying out loud to yourself and talking it through and writing down what your situation is and understanding it is super helpful, right? Because we are having a lot of burnout. We're making hundreds, if not maybe thousands of decisions a day, consciously sometimes, and subconsciously many others. So we want to make sure that we're in the moment, we're not blowing through that budget, but we also don't want to create such mental stress. I've seen it before, right? You want to buy something, you think it's more expensive than it should be, and then what do? You spend 3 hours looking to save $15.
Never done that ever.
Everybody's done that. And you know what? It's not the $15, it's that time and the mental stress. Is that worth your $15? For some, absolutely it may be, and it might be worth their while to search and hunt that down. But others, I think you have to say to yourself, is it worth this mental anguish of going down this rabbit hole online, or just pulling the trigger because I need it? And I think that's the important thing. Is this something you need, or is this something you want, right? And we've talked about that before. If it's something you want, put it in the shopping cart, leave it there, come back 24 hours later. If it's still something that you think you need or want, then pull the trigger. But a lot of times after that 24 hours, you're like, I don't need this. Let me delete it out. If it's something you absolutely need, then you might not want to spend 2 hours trying to save $15.
And on the flip side of that, you talked about how people will spend maybe hours to save 10 or 20 bucks. How do you suggest to clients to think about their time as money?
Yeah, I think you have to look at what your hourly rate is, right? Because especially entrepreneurs, which, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and we'll say to them, well, what's your hourly rate? If your hourly rate is $50 an hour, $75 an hour, is it really worth spending an hour to save that $15? Probably not. Pull the trigger. Or maybe you have somebody who works for you, an assistant that might be able to help you, or a virtual assistant that could take that task off your shoulders and find you the lower price and do it at a much cheaper rate. Because you would be better served focusing on your business and adding value there than saving that $10 or $15 many times.
And just lastly, how can people build in control in their budgets and in their lifestyles that just cushions them a little better from anything unexpected that might come along?
Yeah, I think having an emergency fund, and when I say emergency fund, I really mean emergency fund. I don't mean, hey, we decided to go skiing this weekend. It's an emergency. We need to use that money. So have an emergency fund for those things that might pop up, so that if you don't have the cash flow available to fix the plumbing or the appliance, you have that account to go to.
Nice. All right. Well, great to speak with you, and thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Thank
Lawrence
you.
Sprung, Midland Financial. Coming up this weekend, the Super Bowl is finally here.
That's right, Patriots versus Seahawks in what looks like a very tight matchup. NTD's Dave Martin is going to join us and break down the game. Stay with us. And welcome back. And now for your sports news, we're joined by the man, NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, probably one of the man. Well, this weekend you are. This is one of the biggest sports weekends, really, of the year. Because not only the Super Bowl, but also the Olympics. But of course, let's start with the big game.
Of course, I think, this matchup, I really like this matchup. Statistically, it's a very tight matchup we've got here. Both teams rank in the top 5 in fewest points allowed and most points scored. I mean, both teams can win offensive shootouts. Both teams can win those defensive struggles. I'll just say this right off the bat, though. I am picking the Seahawks to win this game. Now, they are slight favorites. I've seen anywhere from 3 to 5 points. So I'm not really going out on a huge limb here, but that is my pick, just for the record. All right, Kerry? So
all right.
Everybody usually, holds me to that. We'll see come next week how this works out. But I really feel like the main reason is Seattle Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold. Last year, he had a great season for Minnesota, struggled, though, in the playoffs. I really felt in these playoffs, he's really come back to try to maybe kind of redeem himself a little bit here. And really, he's a really good feel-good story here. If you remember 2018, he was a first-round pick of the Jets. Did not have much success with the Jets there. Kind of bounced around the league, several teams there. Then he hits Minnesota last year, has a great season for them. They go with J.J. McCarthy, though, this year at quarterback. So he signs with Seattle in the offseason. Has another tremendous year for them. It kind of speaks to how long it does take to go from success in college at quarterback to success in the pros at quarterback. Now, one thing though he has never done is beat the Patriots. So we'll see if he checks that box on Sunday.
It's a lot to look out for. I love that redemption story. The journeyman, of course. Here in New York, he went to the Jets, and then, as you say, he struggled. Right?
A number of quarterbacks have gone to the Jets and struggled.
Unfortunately.
As a Jets fan, I can definitely say that.
I'm sorry. Let's talk about the Pats, though, because clearly the Brady dynasty, Brady comes in as a young gun and does something unprecedented. Now we've got this quarterback. I never even heard of him because he had played at UNC. He wasn't at a major program. And now, could this be the dawn of a new dynasty for the Pats?
That would be absolutely amazing if they, had just a few years between dynasties. Dynasties don't just come about every day. Look at the Jets. They have yet to have a dynasty.
We'll take one, right?
We'll take one. Hopefully, it's coming soon. But I mean, obviously Brady and Belichick winning 6 Super Bowls together is amazing. Brady left after 2019. Belichick 4 years later. Clearly, though, whether they have a dynasty or not, they've definitely got their future set at quarterback with Drake May, though. He was a finalist for the MVP award. He went to Matt Stafford last night, who was definitely very deserving of it. Meanwhile, their coach, Mike Vrabel, was fired by Tennessee a couple years ago. And now he comes in, leads them to a huge turnaround. They only won 4 games each of the last 2 years. They won 14 this past year. In fact, both Patriots and the Seahawks did not make the playoffs last year. So I certainly did not pick these two to make the Super Bowl, or either one of them, by themselves coming into the season. I figured, maybe the Chiefs or the Bills out of the AFC, and then maybe the Niners or Eagles out of the NFC, kind of the old guard that we've had the past few years. This is a surprise matchup. I think, though, looking at how fans are going to view this, I don't think fans want to see another Patriots dynasty at this point. When you're successful like that, like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Golden State Warriors, you get that, a lot of people like you, but a lot of people also don't like you because, they want their own team to be good. So.
Or an underdog, right?
Or an underdog. That would be fun to see because we've kind of got 2 underdogs, at least with the players. I mean, this isn't the same. This isn't Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's. So I'd still kind of say these are 2 underdogs going at it. So I'm looking forward to this match.
There's a lot of angles here. We could do a whole show about it probably, but we're starting to be tight on time, but I do want to get your take on the Olympics.
Well, I love seeing the Lindsey Vonn story heading into these games. She's got that ruptured ACL, and she's somehow going to go through and ski on that. That's incredible. And she had that 6 years off. She's got a titanium implant in her right knee, the other knee, meanwhile, so it's pretty incredible. It's kind of taking the spotlight from Michaela Schifrin, very successful. The GOAT. She did not have a great 2022 Olympic Games, though. I'm sure she'd like to put that behind her. You also have Chloe Kim here, another American star. She's coming in with an injury. She had that torn labrum in her shoulder about a month ago. Now, she is a two-time Olympic gold medal winning in the half-pipe competition coming in. No one's ever won 3 in a row. And of course, for the hockey, we've got the NHL players returning to the games. Now, this is
maybe a miracle on ice. Is it possible?
It would be a miracle, probably. I shouldn't say it's a miracle. It would be less of a miracle this time. The U.S. is not favored, but they should be in the running. I'm hoping maybe they can get a medal this time. They haven't medaled since 2010. The women, meanwhile, they have medaled in each of the last 7 Olympic Games, winning 2 golds there. So. Opening ceremonies this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Looking forward to it.
Hockey and soccer, the ladies rock, don't they?
The ladies rock.
Thanks, Dave. A lot to look out for this weekend. And winning Olympic figure skating gold takes far more than perfect jumps. It's a blend of precision, emotion, magic. Team USA skaters Amber Glenn and Jason Brown unpack what defines a gold medal performance on the world's biggest stage. Have a look.
What makes a gold medal performance is heart. When you can feel that emotion from that athlete and fight and grit.
Sometimes the gold medal performance isn't what wins gold. There's a feeling to it, a excitement, and in the scoring system, that's not always what wins. And it is a technical sport, but there is a lightness to that Olympic champion.
I think so often we think about Olympic performances, or we dream about the ease of an Olympic performance. Someone going out there and it's just like they make it look effortless, and like every movement was flawless and no hair out of place. And like at the end of the day, it's about fighting, it's about grit, it's about performing. It's like all of it wrapped into one and never giving up from the time you start to finish.
Unbelievable, those triple, quadruple axles. I don't know how they do it. Well, look, if you have any feedback on the show or there's a story you'd like to see us cover, maybe an Olympic story, let us know. Send us an email at goodmorning@ntd.com.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or watch us on our NTD app. I'm Stephanie Cox.
I'm Carrie Dunst. Have a great Olympic weekend and Super Bowl weekend.